I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mrs. Norian, would you lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sunshine Law statement, all requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the Record and Town News and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darian, would you read the mission statement?
The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta. Mrs. Nygam.
Here.
Mrs. Downey.
Here.
Mr. Griffin will be absent. Mrs. Norian.
Here.
Mrs. Walker. Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Darian.
Here.
Mrs. Nichols.
Here, open to the public for agenda items only. Not seeing any, we'll move forward. I have one thing this evening from my report. In the past, the town has asked us to support their Safe Streets grants. They get a grant, I guess, for paving. It's road work, right?
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks. So in the past, we have done this. They need a letter of support from the school to submit with the grant application, I guess it is. And they basically write the letter for us, and we've sent it in. So would anyone be opposed to Ms. Bozios submitting it on our behalf? We've done it before.
They're gonna do the sidewalks in front of the school?
No, I don't know where they are. It's somewhere in town. It doesn't have to really do with us, but they need support from the
Yeah.
board. That would be nice, though.
Yeah.
Anyone not in favor of it? Okay, so you have your answer, and we will move to your report.
Good evening. I have been talking so much about CUSAC, partially because it's a new process for me, and also because the district hasn't gone through an official CUSAC evaluation for 12 years. We happen to be in a very unique cohort. It normally happens every 3 years, and something kept happening, and we are high performing, so they kept giving us a waiver. And I realized that for many members of the board, they've never been through a CUSAC evaluation, so I say it and you shake your heads politely. And I thought it might help, since today the CUSAC committee met. Mrs. Norian represented the board on that committee, that I give you a little bit of an overview. So CUSAC stands for the New Jersey Single Accountability Continuum, and in 2005, legislation was put in place to ensure that all schools across the state, and that includes public schools and county special education schools, are evaluated by a set criteria. And it's broken up into 5 district performance reviews, and it starts with a self-evaluation. What happens after we submit that self-evaluation, which on your agenda today you will vote to give me permission to submit the self-evaluation, later in the year 2 things will happen. Off-site, they will review many of our files. So our budgets that they can access electronically, our policies that they can access electronically, our curriculum. And they will evaluate and give points to the district remotely. They will visit Oradell Public School this year as well. That one day they will walk through the building to ensure that our buildings and grounds are safe for students. And on another day, they will come in and do an on-site evaluation so that it's a little bit more of an anonymous one. They will open up personnel records and just ensure that every personnel record meets the standards that are required. They will randomly select purchase orders to ensure that all of our purchase orders are meeting the requirements. So for that review, there are 5 domains. The first one is instruction and programming, and each domain is broken up into indicators. So I gave you some of the topics that are in that domain underneath there. So there's 16 indicators in instruction and program. In fiscal management, we have 15. In governance, we have 14. Operations is 18. And personnel is 6. And so as I was working on this, I was like, personnel is going to be great. They forget to tell you that they separate personnel into 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 2A, 2B. It was not, I thought I was done, and I wasn't. A district, every one of those performance indicator areas is eligible to receive 100 points. A district must receive 80 points in each of those performance review areas to be deemed as highly high performing, which Oradell has received a high performing rating in the past, which is why sometimes we were given the waiver to not go through the full evaluation. So what I thought might be helpful today, because the actual manual is 146 pages, and breaks everything up, is just to give you a taste. The committee today, which is made up of, as I said, Mrs. Noreen representing the board, the OEA president, teachers, administrators, Mr. Iapelli from the finance side, reviewed every single indicator. And I said, well, I could take you through that 27-page PowerPoint tonight, but I like you all way too much to do that. So I gave you a little bit of a sample here. So one area that the county will look at is our achievement score. So as we know, the district is incredibly high performing in language arts, and so they use a formula to calculate how many points towards the 10 that we use. And it's a really cool formula because what they do is they take the total number of students, which is meeting or exceeding expectations. So for Oradell Public School is 90% of our population is meeting or exceeding expectations. And then they also take the average of all of the subgroups to make sure that each of those subgroups that we reported on are students with disabilities, our 504 students, students of different races and ethnicities are also, and they average both of those scores together. They do that in English language arts, in mathematics, and in science, and that's where 2, 3, and 4 come from. And then they also look at our progress. So New Jersey is really big on not just achievement, but also progress. So we have something called student growth percentiles, which shows how much each of our students is growing compared to students who score the same score the year before. So if you have a child in 3rd grade and they scored a 750 on state assessments, then what they would do is look at that student's score in 4th grade and say, how much did they grow compared to everyone else that scored a 750 the year before? And you get a percentile rank. The school then also gets a percentile rank, whereas our average score. So they'll take our growth rate in language arts, our growth rate in mathematics. There is no science growth rate. They will also look at our chronic absenteeism score, and this is something we've spoken about before as a district. It's an area we need to grow in. We currently have an 8% chronic absenteeism, which means 8% of our population is missing 18 days or more. And so what they will be looking at is what protocols have we put in place and what intervention systems have we put in place to scaffold that child to attend school. They will then also look at our language arts curriculum. So they will look at every aspect of our curriculum: language arts curriculum, mathematics curriculum, science, social studies, comprehensive health and physical education, fine and performing arts. Each of those curriculums is worth 4 points. They must have a pacing guide. They must be aligned to state standards. They must show evidence of meeting other state mandates like the Amistad mandate and the Holocaust mandate. And then they will also, the big one, the last round of CUSAC, when it began, they always pick something that's kind of big that year, like what's in that round going to be the big thing. And right now it is tiered systems of support. So we will need to provide evidence of intervention plans that we have put in place for students and how we are monitoring individual students' growth. And that will be intervention plans not just for academics, but intervention plans for students who are showing emotional need and actually absenteeisms. So you do need to have an intervention plan if a student is showing high levels of absenteeism. So once we leave instruction and management, we get to fiscal management, which is, Mr. Iapelli's area, so I get to breathe a little bit more easily. And a lot of this is just what happens all the time. They will look at our monthly board secretary reports. They will look at our treasurer reports. They will look and ask for a link to our standard operating procedures. They will look at our audit, not just from the last year, but from the 2 years prior. They also will look at our grant submissions. So we know as a district, we get several federal grants. We get our title funds. All of those come with specific submission requirements. They will look to make sure that we've been awarded them, that we've spent them, and that we have applied for reimbursement, because we don't just get the money. We actually apply, we do the program, and then we get reimbursed for it. We have already submitted our health and safety checklist and evaluation of the building. And then what happens is 9B and 9C are those actual walkthroughs. So now they're going to walk through the building and make sure that everything we put on our health and safety checklist is accurate. In the area of governance, that's a lot of the work that you do as a board. So they will review our policies, specifically the mandated and monitored policies. Every district has mandated policies, monitored policies, and other. Those other ones are typically the ones that are specific to us as a district. They also will evaluate and look at how we have submitted our contract. So you'll remember when we hired a business administrator, we can't just put a business administrator on the agenda. We need to actually submit that contract to the county. That's why we voted twice. We voted first to submit the contract to the county, and the second time to approve Mr. Iapelli to that role. And that's really important. A lot of districts skip that initial step, which is one of the areas they lose points on. They will look at the minutes from our past meetings to ensure that we've followed every step of the budget process, from posting our budget timelines to the initial presentation of the budget, and did we do public notice for all of that. And one of my favorite indicators, and I find it interesting that it's in governance and not in instruction, is that every school district in the state of New Jersey is required to have a district library media specialist. And that it's important enough to the state that it's not just an instructional piece, it's not just a personnel piece, it's part of governance. In the area of operations, this has to do a lot with all of the reports we do. Anyone who works in central office in a New Jersey public school will tell you that while we love the digital world, it has made it even easier for the state to ask for required submissions all the time, submissions of our personnel. Who are our staff members? How many years have they been in the district? The most recent submission, we actually had to start adding what type of college did they go to? Did they go to college in New Jersey? Did they go to college out of New Jersey? This spreadsheet that gets submitted just keeps growing and growing and growing. And we also do the same thing for our students as well. The CDS submission is actually the easiest of all. It is county, district, and school, and it's just ensuring that at any point in time, the state knows exactly who is in every role in the district. Who is your district data coordinator? Who is your director of gifted and talented education? Who is your business administrator, your supervisor of buildings and grounds? Number 5, again, I love that this is in operations. It has to do with the code of conduct. Every district must have a policy that references a code of conduct. What's really interesting is the indicator for this goes as much to say as it cannot be a truly punitive code of conduct. It can't just say this happened and this child's getting suspended. It has to show that there are behavioral supports in place to improve that behavior, and it has to minimize exclusionary practices. So we know that in the state of New Jersey, we can only take so many recesses away. We don't want to take kids away from that. They do not want to see extensive levels of suspension and expulsion, which I hope will never happen at Oradell Public. And number 10 is actually on your board agenda today. It is not enough to just do the bus evacuation drill. You actually have to put it on an agenda and document exactly what occurred. In the area of personnel, which is our last indicator, DPR 5, This has a lot to do with teacher evaluation, and it's twofold. So every year, we have to submit our teacher evaluation scores to the state because a teacher must maintain an effective rating. Now, so that's the evaluation information system review. But we also have to keep on site all our staff evaluations. So when I say they will go into personnel records, they will pick certain educators and they will look for, were they evaluated the proper number of times? Were they given feedback in a timely manner? Did they have goals set that year? Were their goals rigorous? And were they submitted in a timely manner? The School Improvement Panel is a group of teachers and administrators that helps set our professional development for the year. And they want to see the minutes from those meetings and agendas and how the work that they're doing is aligned to the work that the entire school is doing. Every district and every school must also have a professional development plan. And one of the areas in that plan is all the mandated trainings that employees must do. So every group of employee has different mandated trainings. So our custodians may need to do bloodborne pathogens, but I as superintendent don't need to do bloodborne pathogens. However, I may have different trainings. So they will not only look to see that staff members are working on them this year, but they will also look to ensure that they were all completed last year. So we use a digital platform for that, so we'll print out the reports in that area. They will look to make sure all new teachers have been properly supported through a mentoring system, and they will actually go as far as to ask for the mentoring logs that were kept. As we know, in the state of New Jersey, any teacher that is in their first year of teaching must be mentored for the entire year. They do not get a standard certification until the end of their second year. And the last one here is the position control roster. So the position control roster is a digital document that states every employee in the district with a certification and what they're teaching. It ensures that they have the proper certification, and it also ensures that their salary is being taken from the right line, because salaries come from different lines in a budget. So it's to make sure that our personnel and our fiscal piece are all aligned. In terms of our next steps, we will be submitting, assuming you vote to do this so today, to submit the DPR self-evaluation through New Jersey Homeroom. And what that says is that our committee has met. It's a large spreadsheet that says that as a district, we are saying we meet each of these areas. And then when the county comes in, they will open that up and they will actually put what their score is next to our score. So if we say we earned all 8 points, but they've decided, this one area is a little weak, they may give us 6 points in that area. And then, as I stated earlier, there are 2 on-site portions, the building walkthrough and the review of files. So that was CUSAC in 12 minutes. And if you're Mr. Butcher, you got to hear that twice today, and it took me over an hour the first time. But do you have any questions about the CUSAC process?
I have a question. For the on-site portions, do we know how long it typically takes for the review?
So the building walkthrough is shorter, and partially the reason it will be shorter for us is the county wants you to succeed. Nobody wants schools not to be doing well, they just want to ensure that you're meeting everything you need to be doing, right? So they do give you the opportunity to set up a trial. So we did a trial walkthrough last year, and so we kind of knew if there was anything that was concerning. So that may actually only take an hour. The day that they actually come to do everything else will be a full day of them on site. So in March, if you see me shaking, it's that day.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Oh, Ms. Acosta?
Just a quick question. So Oradell is a one-school district, and so how do they work it in a district, say, like Patterson or Newark? Do they just go to the central district
just
where
pass
the board
it.
is?
They actually, I was a teacher in a multi-school district, so when it comes to those areas like curriculum, they're district-level curriculum, so they'll look at that fully. When it comes to the building walkthrough, they typically do one at each level. So If you were in Ridgewood, for example, there are 6 elementary schools. One of those elementary schools is getting the walkthrough.
And that's up to them? They
Yes.
surprise, like they won't tell you until that day?
Typically, yes. I mean, listen, sometimes they might give you a heads up to make sure that something crazy is not going on in that school that day. But it is one at each level because there sometimes are different requirements. So they may also, in the case again of Ridgewood, do 1 elementary school, 1 middle school, and the high school.
Thank you.
My question was, when we submit the evaluation with our scores, do they ever bump them up as opposed to bumping them down?
They actually tell us always to give ourselves more.
Okay.
I guess they've found that schools are a lot harder
Conservative.
on themselves than they may be.
So we submitted our scores?
No,
We're going to do it, I mean, after we vote tonight, but is there any categories that we did not give ourselves a full score? Because I thought we're supposed to give ourselves, we give ourselves the full score on everything, and then they come and,
And again, it's because they feel sometimes when we might be so hard on ourselves. So even though there's like a comment area, they're like, maybe tell us the comment.
anything else? Anything from your report?
I was trying to think about, it's been a long time since our last meeting, and I feel like a gazillion things have happened. There were Halloween parades, there have been children running around. I have to tell you, one of the best parts about being the principal and then being the superintendent is that even today, like a student walked downstairs, they needed something. But so like things like that just keep happening, and overall, I think it's been a great 2 weeks since our last meeting. I'm very excited, and I did want to invite all of members of the board. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving is our STEAM Day. So we'll have 2 grade levels at a time in the multipurpose room, and they will be doing STEAM activities correlated to Thanksgiving and Macy's Day Parades and things like that, and you are all more than welcome to come. I will send you a schedule of what's happening that day, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Business Administrator, Mr. Iapelli.
Nothing at this time.
Moving on to minutes. We had the review of October 18th. Any questions or comments, please email Mr. Iapelli. We have approval of October 4th. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of October 4th.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Walker. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta? Mrs. Nygam?
Yes.
Mrs. Downey stepped up. Mr. Griffin is absent. Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Committee reports, administrative. Would you take that, Mr. Darian?
Sure, we have items A1 and the 3 additions, recent additions regarding CUSAC is A2 through A4. I'd like to introduce items A1 through A4.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Norian. Any questions?
Could I
Ms.
just
Norian?
make one comment?
Yep.
Just for legal correction, I'm listed as Mary Catherine Norian. You may want to make sure that that says that in case they're sticklers for CUSAC. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta? Mrs. Nygam?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes, buildings and grounds, Mr. Darian.
Yes, before I introduce this, I'd like to just comment that we had a Buildings and Grounds meeting on November 8th. That was last Wednesday. We discussed a lot of things. Actually, I was going to talk to some of them here. We had a roof update. You'll see on this agenda under Finance D8, we're approving $39,400 for our architect. That's to do drawings, submit them to the state for approval on replacing 2 of the roofs. we have a complicated building. Each section has its own roof. There are like 7 different varieties of roofs. So we treat them, each section, as an independent roof. So 2 sections are being replaced, and that's what's on D8. We also have other sections. One needs repairing. We had some investigation work done. We're looking to get a quote on repairing that. We had an HVAC update. We have a ROD grant, which is a regular operating district grant. We're waiting on results, final approvals, but we're using that ROD grant to replace some classroom HVAC units, ones that we didn't replace back when we did the ESIP program, where we replaced all the univents. We have the auditorium update. Also tonight is the final payment for this room. We made sure the punch list was completed. We did discuss a couple of things that was not involving the contractors, things we'd like to get done ourselves, and we're looking for an update on the timeline there. The Center Street, we put in the new retaining wall, but we were also considering landscaping in that area, and we're moving forward with some quotes on that project. There was some school building security issues that came up. They always come up. It's nothing new. We're just looking to improve on our existing system. And then we had some miscellaneous things. We had one item we've had a disagreement on for a very long time, and we finally come to an agreement, and which makes me happy. And we discussed doors. We have a lot of doors in the building, and so we had over many years an implementation plan where we're replacing the outside doors with more modern insulated doors as opposed to the old doors. And we still have some old wooden ones, so we just need to finish that and make sure the building is weather tight and up to current standards regarding exterior doors. It's not a safety issue, it's just aesthetics and energy efficiency. So with all that, I'd like to introduce for buildings grounds use items B1. And
I'll second it.
yeah, just B1.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Mrs. Walker?
I see on the minutes of your last meeting that you were speaking about, you reviewed how, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, but verkada,
Yes.
the verkada can be used as a door access. What is that?
So, all our doors have contact switches that works for the alarm system, but it also works for our secured access system. And verkada is our secured access system. It also controls the access panels that works with our key cards. So when you swipe your card, it opens the door. There's other things that verkada can do that we're looking to enhance.
For safety?
For safety reasons, yeah. And we wanted to integrate more with cameras. It integrates, but we want to integrate more with cameras, and we want to ensure that we're as safe as possible. So, but that's what verkada is, and we're going to be meeting with them to see, what else they can do for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Nygam,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey,
Yes.
Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes,
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Curriculum, Mrs. Negum?
Yes, so the curriculum committee met on November 3rd, and we had a good discussion, actually, on the various topics that had been brought to the board's attention. The admin team provided us an overview of the current role of phonics and phonemic awareness in various reading instruction that happens at OPS, including how it was addressed in the prior years, as well as the implementation of the Foundations program since 2019 and how it has been developed over time. There were specific items that were identified in terms of recent changes that have been made for the foundation system, particularly in second grade for the 22-23 school year. Then, application of differentiated learning for the first grade from last year as well. So, we've reviewed a bunch of topics as it relates to incorporating Heggerty, which is that phonemic awareness I was alluding to earlier for kindergarten, which was put in for Tier 3 intervention last year, but is going to be expanded, I guess, right? And then also purchasing of decodable readers for K through 1. So there's, we reviewed basically all the recent changes that have been made, and also identified some next steps in terms of adding, additional certification for teachers using Wharton Gillingham, and adding some additional tools, as well as the rewriting of curriculum, which is also supposed to happen coming up.
That's for the new state standards, right, that are coming out in September 24? That's what we're rewriting for?
Yeah, so that's my summary for tonight.
Any questions? Finance, Mr. Griffin is not here tonight, but he did request in our meeting that you would cover for him.
Yes, we had a meeting just this week, finance, and I guess the minutes are, they're not included, are they? I don't think so. I didn't see them. No, they're not included yet. So, and
They're actually,
are they?
they are. They came with our packet today, I believe. Electronic.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, there is. So just to recap for the community and for members here, we did discuss LightPath charges. LightPath is our internet, and the bandwidth. It goes all the way back to the days when we had the mandated testing to be online. We wanted to make sure with state testing we had proper bandwidth issues, and now it seems like it's the dark ages. So we have no issues. We were just looking at the current usage and how much we're paying. We talked about the solar energy system that we have on the roofs. We were interested about how much they're contributing, and we didn't know whether we're going to get any SRECs. And so we did some investigation with PSE&G, and we reviewed those findings. And I guess at this point, we just have to determine in the future if we want to, increase our solar generation, or we're happy with the current output. We talked about technology goal. We have a goal, a district goal for technology, and one of the action plans, or one of the steps for this goal, is to conduct a survey. And so we reviewed the survey in the subcommittee. And we talked about upcoming buildings and grounds projected costs. So, it's no surprise we have an older building. The big costs are mostly HVAC related. Rooftop units are about $100K if you need to replace them. And we have quite a few of them. They're all in different states of decay. And so we just discussed them, and later on we'll probably prioritize repairs and replacement. But mostly it was just a financial discussion, and I think the B&G will take it further from there. So with that, let me introduce items D1 through D9.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta.
Yes.
Mrs. Negum.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Delegate report, Mr. Walsh.
I have nothing to report
Thank you.
at this time.
Personnel, Mrs. Walker.
Yes, we had a meeting this evening. We talked about a number of, that the Mantoux and investigating into that and looking at different personnel records to bring them up to speed, especially with CUSAC coming. And a couple of other assorted things. And with that, I'd like to present F1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Mrs. Walker?
I have a question on B7, Perlacy. I see $645 for her class, her conference, and that's for 129 and 130, so that would be one class.
What are you looking at?
Um,
Oh,
um,
B8?
B7.
B8?
Oh, is it 8?
It's 8.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have my old one where
yeah.
It's B8.
I'm assuming that's the cost of the class. Yep.
It's actually not just a workshop, she's being trained to be a trainer in that. So whenever
Okay.
you're going to be a trainer,
'Cause I
it's
was
always got an increased cost associated with it.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
On B4 and 5, the NJTESOL, what does that stand for, the spring conference?
Teacher of teacher of English as a second language.
Second language. And NJBE?
I feel like I'm being quizzed. Can I see it, please?
Which one is it?
New Jersey bilingual education.
Any other questions? Call the question?
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta,
Yes.
Mrs. Negum,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey, Mrs. Norian,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Policy, Mrs. Norian?
Yes, we did have a meeting on November 13th as well. We kept Ms. Bozios very busy that day. And we went over policies, and the information I had was to have these for first reading. We can go ahead with those because we've had the addition of our questions answered by our attorney, and those are included in the packet that you got tonight. So if you'll be careful and read that over so that you know what all of those items are. I would like to present item G1.
I'll second it.
Well, there's no roll call, so if we can just remove this line from the minutes. But if you have any questions for Mrs. Norian or any comments, please email her, Ms. Bozios, and myself, because we will need to get these on for the next meeting.
Oh, my God.
Does everybody get a copy?
Yeah, you should have gotten it in your packet today.
You guys are busy. Did you even sleep,
From today?
Catherine? to get this all?
What? Well,
These-
there's a lot of information in here. We did go over all of the policies that are included here. So I was going cross-eyed, so now it's your turn. And you get to tell me if there's anything that strikes you that we need to address further before we get it to second reading, okay?
Thank you.
Public Relations, Mrs. Acosta?
We've had, I think, 2 meetings to discuss the surveys that we're thinking about sending out. I thought I was loud enough. We're working on a student, staff, and family survey.
So Ms. Bozios was able to get them into our packet for the board. So if everyone wants to see, the surveys are in they're confidential right now. They're for board eyes only. So if you have any comments on them, please email Mrs. Acosta, Ms. Bozios, and myself. Because we'll be meeting again and probably sending them out. You want to send them out after the holidays, I believe, right? We'll see. Just read them, please, and get your comments to us ASAP. At this time, we'll open to the public. Not seeing anyone, we will move any old or new business. Mrs. Walker?
I brought along, I attended the Riverdale Board of Ed's referendum meeting the other night, and I have a number of brochures here which outlines the whole referendum and how they really have done a super job of preparing this, spending many hours on it. And I guess the bottom line of the whole thing is that the whole referendum is 18, I think it's, let's see, it's 12 million total after state aid, because the state aid, they are getting 6.4 million. If the referendum doesn't pass, we're going to lose that 6.4 million. So, and it really is a timely thing. It's been 20 years, which is the other advantageous thing about passing this referendum, because it's coming off the last referendum, which was passed in 2002. So if you take a look, and at the back page, or it's on the website, they're claiming that if your assessed value for your home is $500 and I think it's $35,000 assessed value, then that would be a total of $143 or something like that. Whereas at the back page or on the website, if you key in, you can actually put your assessed value of your home to get the exact amount of how much you would be paying. But it was a very impressive presentation. Unfortunately, there were only like 10 people there. I'm not sure, I know they're having one Sunday for the seniors, but I'm sure they'll be
I don't
getting
think it's
other-
just for the seniors. I think that they billed it as for the seniors, but I think that it's open to anyone.
Anyone could
Yeah.
go, right. But it would be if you have time to go by and see.
What is
because
it, the 19th?
It's very informative,
Well,
so.
the 12th, I believe that.
So I
the
have
next
these,
meeting's
if
on the
anyone
12th.
wants one, I'll
I
pass them
thought it
out.
was the 19th.
No, I'm sorry, it's got to be,
It's this
yeah.
this
it's gotta
Sunday.
be- Yeah, it's got to be this Sunday, so that's the 19th. I'm sorry. I was thinking too many other things.
Thank you.
Any other business? Mrs. Needham?
Just wanted to say I had a very enjoyable time with the fifth grade students at the Sharp trip. It was absolutely wonderful, and I think it's just one of those activities that I'm glad that we can support as a school district for our children. I think it's very precious.
How many nights did you spend in the cabin?
2 nights.
Oh, dedicated.
2 nights, whoa.
You paid your dues.
I did.
I would just like to make a comment, having sat through the meeting this afternoon for CUSAC and where we've come so far. I think that the staff and Ms. Bozios have done an excellent job at preparing everything for CUSAC, and I think that we should be in good shape, and I want to thank them for doing such a thorough job.
I heard you say you forgot Sharp. Do you want to say anything?
I just have one really big Sharp question. If you've read any of our social media about Sharp, you'll sometimes see over 35 years. And Mrs. McGill commented on Facebook, make that over 40 years. If there's anyone in this community that can actually tell me how many years we've gone to Sharp, because it truly is an Oradell tradition, and it's one of the things that I've always said about this district. We are always about moving forward, but we also are about holding on to some of these experiences, and Sharp is clearly one of them. So if anyone can find out for me how many years we've gone, I will be forever indebted, because
page one,
we just keep changing the date.
Well, my daughter is my oldest. I have 4, and she went to Sharp, so, and she's in her early 50s.
Yeah,
So,
it's going to be close to 50 years.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Bridget went to Sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see 50-year anniversary shirts in our
It's probably
future.
more than that.
You probably
That
missed
was
the
like
50.
1976, 77, something like that, yeah.
Right? Had to be in the 70s.
Yeah, it was like
Bridget.
76, 77.
I will tell you that I can still come up with the sharp notebooks from my daughters. That was their prized possessions, and they kept them for a very, very long time. Now they're in my house. I guess I'm keeping them.
Put them in your garage.
We'll
No,
let you
no,
know.
not in the garage. They're in the archives, you know, their rooms, the museum pieces up there.
Any other old or new business? Mrs. Costa?
How did the Halloween parade work out because of the change in time?
We actually did get some feedback to change the time again, and it did make sense. Now that we've done it later in the day, it did impact parents who had middle schoolers. They couldn't pick up at middle school, but we've worked it, and we think we have the time next year until somebody tells us we've figured out the wrong time again. But I actually do like it later in the day. It was kind of nice to then send everyone off after that. And again, how creative are kids sometimes. I was telling children that my Halloween costume was that thing you put on with the plastic mask that you got for like $19.99 somewhere. And we saw kids with amazing costumes this year. And one of the
some
pieces,
parents.
yeah, and one of the pieces, you'd have to be a really long-standing member of this community to understand is I am so happy that our staff has embraced Halloween. They, I think, I will say, and it's not just because he's in the room, if you ever want to give the best Halloween costume award, you would need to give them to our special area teachers. They were Toy Story this year, and Mr. Butcher, you were Rex, big blow-up dinosaur. So, and every year, I kind of wait to see what they're going to be, and I love that our staff allows kids to see them in that environment as well.
Yeah, pictures.
Any other old or new business? We do need to go into a closed session for
So-
personnel and legal issues, so if someone would like to make a
So I move
motion.
that we go into a closed session.
I'll second it.
Moved by Catherine, second by Mr. Walsh. Roll call.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta.
Yes.
Mrs. Needham.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, we will not be taking any action after the meeting, so we'll be done.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
I would assume.